Chapter 7. When he separated from Flora, Evan had not considered that he would have to be a pooper scooper. He looked at Herbie and pointed a finger. "Listen, wee doggy, I object to you shitting on my shift." He checked his pockets, knowing he didn't have anything handy. "Do you think she'll know if we leave it, pal?" Herbie cocked his head from one side to the other. "Yeah, you're right. She's like CSI. No doubt she numbers the evidence bags." He glanced towards Flora, a shout of good-natured complaint ready to fly from his lips. But something was wrong. Evan could see there was somebody else there, but it was Flora's body language that tripped his switch. Her stance was awkward, with her arms and the dogs tucked behind her. He was trying to figure it out when Riley let out a meaningful series of barks, which kick-started his legs pumping towards them. There was a man, another dog. Evan tripped, hampered by the poodles weaving in 4 different directions, but if he let the leads go, they might never come back. The man was big, threatening her, and Evan didn't know if he'd get there in time, so he did the only thing he could. He yelled, "Flora!" No sooner had the first echo faded when he did it again, even louder. Flora was on the verge of promising God she'd raise the homeless man's baby as long as her dogs didn't get savaged. She heard Evan's second cry and it prompted her to action. Determined to keep his attention on her and away from the dogs, she gave the stranger a look of vindication, pinning him dead in his dull, grey, lifeless eyes. With confidence she sure as sugar didn't feel, she strained herself to enunciate clearly. "That," she pointed, "is my boyfriend. He's bigger, younger, and fitter than you, and he's a trained martial artist. You force me to kick the shit out of your dog, he's going to do the same to you unless you walk away right now." Flora had no idea if Evan had hit anybody in his life, but he looked like a natural. She felt his approach like a physical current and wished she could turn around and take comfort in just seeing him. She could picture him wild and vengeful, Braveheart in a beanie hat. Nevertheless, she'd murder him herself if he'd let go of those poodles. The man's gaze wavered. Flora could tell he was weighing his chances, and now, feeling outnumbered, whatever happened, it wasn't going to be what he'd hoped. He tightened the leash on his dog and pulled, uttering a terse command that had the animal retreating reluctantly. Flora received a derisory tilt of the head as he disappeared back down the dike in the direction that he'd appeared. Evan hurtled up, the air discharging in his wake and puffing out breaths that left smoke trails in the air. The poodles dived between them, yipping in excitement. "Are you okay?" He didn't wait for an answer, trying to throw the leads at her to go after the threat. "No, Evan, please." Flora screeched at him, afraid he wouldn't listen. "You'll get yourself ripped to shreds. Please stay with us. Please, please just stay." Shudders racked her body as the shock at the near catastrophe finally hit. Flora's knees went wobbly, her vision wavered, and her tummy threatened to buckle. Evan grabbed her, pulling her into his body and cradling her. The two of them, with hands full of leads and bags of poop and a mess of dogs, circling and jumping in delight. What the hell was that about? She snuffled into his chest, which was still heaving from exertion. "He's an opportunist bastard, training his dog to fight. You hear about it all the time, but it's more common in cities. People walking their pets, minding their own business, and these creeps appear and set their dog on them. They use other people's pets for bait. It's completely sick. Oh God, I never thought anything like that would happen here." Evan held Flora tighter as she began to sob. "I was so scared. Not for me. I would have fought back until I was a puddle of goo, but the dogs would have been torn to bits. What if I'd had to stand and watch that happen?" The crying came harder and Evan swore, stroking Flora's back and seeing that arsehole disappear over the fields out of sight. The bastard was scot-free to try it again, and in all of his happy-go-lucky life, he couldn't remember ever being so furious. and mostly it was because the wanker had made Flora cry. The dogs quieted, sensing their mistress was upset, confusion and doggy sympathy all over each face. Evan shifted his grip and hooked an arm around her waist, physically supporting her and trying to get her legs moving. It was like trying to maneuver a lead-weighted jelly. "Come on, sweetheart, we should go home. It's over now." "But it's not, is it?" Flora's teeth were chattering. Her hand was starting to ache, and she tried to tell her brain to loosen the death grip she had on the leashes. What if he's not just passing through? What if he's local? How am I supposed to go out with the dogs? She resumed, shuddering at the idea of a rematch. Evan's inner ancestral warrior longed for a pickaxe to fling at the man's retreating skull. He cupped Flora's jaw and rubbed his thumbs along her chin. "Flora, you'll go about your business just like always, and I'll come with you every time until we know it's safe. I'm not going to let anything happen to you or the dogs, I promise." She looked at him stupefied, and Fillmore licked his hand. He seemed to understand what Evan was saying. "You can't. You're supposed to be looking for work." "I can do whatever I like, and right now that's to support you." The implications of the statement froze him, and Flora looked up, equally surprised, as a tenuous connection formed. It wasn't a bolt of electricity, like in one of Ella's sextravaganzas, but it was warmth, and a scary little tug, somewhere inside, that was unsettling for both of them. "I'm not used to this." "What's that, sweetheart?" Evan took the scarf before it trailed on the ground and wrapped it gently around her neck. "Being looked after. It's a bit scary, if I'm honest." Evan tried to interrupt, but Flora didn't give him a chance. "What if I get used to it and then you go? I have to stand on my own 2 feet. It's the only thing I know." "Flora, I saw you. As shit scared as you must have been, you handled that scene. If you hadn't, he'd have already let the dog go before I even saw what was going on. Whatever you said must have made him think." He tugged gently on the lapels of her coat. "You don't need me, but let me look out for you. If it gets too much, I'll back off, or you can ask me to leave and I'll go." Flora looked at him with her bottom lip still trembling. She breathed out, long and slow, trying to compose herself. As Evan watched, her brown eyes regained a little sparkle. "I can see why you have problems with women. It's hard not to like you. I really don't want to like you, you know?" He pulled her along a bit further. "Don't fight it. I'm hot. I've got a sexy accent, and my shorts barely contain an 8 3/4 inch monster. What's not to like?" His face wrinkled as he remembered something. "Apart from shit." "What?" "I left a shit over there I'm probably never going to find." Flora tried her very best not to smile, but the relief of having someone at her back just got to her. She was scared and a little homesick for Freya, but Evan wouldn't throw her to the wolves or the killer fight dog. That much she could trust. For the rest, she might have to tiptoe an emotional tightrope. The door slammed behind Evan as he kicked off his boots and petted the dogs. "Well, I tried, but the local cop shop is only open a couple of hours a day. There wasn't a soul in sight, just a notice board with a list of emergency contacts and the dog warden's number. It might be more useful to tell him what happened." Evan handed her a scrap of paper he'd scrawled the number on and headed into the kitchen searching for plates. An hour ago, Flora had overlooked the need for secrecy and loaned Evan her car. He'd volunteered to find help and then bring them something to eat. She was too rubbery to disagree or worry about car insurance. Evan rummaged through the wrapping on the fish and chips he'd picked up from the pub. "I appreciate you trying. It's not like the police can do anything except maybe watch out for the creep, but I was hoping to find out if this had happened before." Flora's voice emerged from the sofa deep inside a pile of cushions. She was covered with a throw, had 2 large dogs sat on her, and still felt like ice. Her body didn't know whether to have another cry or fall asleep exhausted. I'll try the warden and give Fiona a call at the vet, see if they've heard anything. What do you want? Salt, vinegar, ketchup, bread and butter? Evan offered. All of it, please, and a cup of tea with 3 sugars. I feel like I need it. A few minutes later, Evan dislodged the dogs and handed Flora a cup and plate. He settled on the couch next to her. Do it on Monday now, Flora. It's Saturday and it's getting late. You're not going to get a hold of anybody and you need to unwind. It's been an absolute pig of a day. It seems a long time since this morning and the morning after pill, doesn't it? It seems even longer since I was having the time of my life causing that particular problem. Flora thumped him with the cushion, making him slop his tea. Aye, watch it, you callous-fingered minx. He looked at her, trying to gauge Flora's mood. Do we need to talk about what happened? About last night, I mean. I don't know. I mean, it was great, more than great. Not to make you any more big-headed than you are, but it was easily the best I've ever had. A huge grin lit up his face and Flora continued talking before he got any smugger. I think maybe we should leave it at that. We probably both just needed it. I was a bit stressed out and vulnerable and made me feel better for a while. What were you thinking? I'm a man. Getting my leg over was what I was thinking. Flora snorted. Good job I've got a sense of humour and a high threshold for tolerating male bullshit. You don't reckon it will happen again? Not with any condoms you own, it won't. She was joking, but then a look passed over her pretty face. Her mouth crumpled and her eyes seemed just a little bit regretful. Let's not commit to anything definite, Evan. The situation is unusual and we're technically strangers. Obviously there's an attraction, but would we have had sex if we hadn't been thrown together? I'm not so sure. Evan watched Flora chew on a slice of bread thoughtfully before continuing. It would be too easy to jump into something, and I'm mindful of what you said. And maybe it's time you considered relationships more carefully, focused on a girl you really want. We definitely would have fun together, but I'm not into casual flings. She jabbed him on the nose with a ketchup-coated chip. Plus, I still feel like whatever you claim to be, in another life you'd be off dating a supermodel or some high-powered career woman. You can keep your secrets, but until I know who you are, I'd rather settle for being your friend. Does that sound okay? No. He wiped his nose with a finger and licked away the evidence. I mean, I'd love to be your friend, and I understand what you're saying, but that doesn't mean I can stop fancying you. Evan looked down at his half-finished plate. Do you realise we've eaten fish and chips 2 days in a row? Do you mind? No, right now, I really fucking don't. Right now, he was thinking he should have obeyed romantic protocol and not had sex with Flora. If he'd done that, there would have been no sex until he had 60% story, just like the more credible novels. Maybe then he would have seen how fantastic she was and not risked pursuing her. That would have made him a proper fictional hero, denying his interest out of respect for his heroine. Now he couldn't seem to focus that interest elsewhere, all of which indicated he was the dirty, nasty bad boy, the opportunist taking advantage, unless Flora could manage to redeem him, and, yeah, good luck with that. What are you doing tomorrow? He changed the subject gruffly. Flora shuddered. Sorry. I was thinking about going back out on a walk. I'd forgotten my anxiety there for a minute. She sighed and shook herself off. Right, that's not an issue because you're going to come with me. Right. And other than that, I'm going to call these people about Herbie, which I should have done today. Maybe if they're in, I can drive over and do a home visit. What about Siobhan at the hall? Are you going to tell her what happened? Shit! Flora bolted upright, nearly knocking her plate flying. Stupid, I didn't even think about the dogs at the hall. Of course I'll have to tell her. Just as quickly, she relaxed again. They should be okay. I haven't seen them once since I got here. Lady Jemima probably doesn't let them get dirty. She sighed tiredly. God, Evan, things seem such a mess. I'll have to let Siobhan know just in case and hope she doesn't ask how I dealt with it. Just tell her you ran into me. She knows I'm around and it's almost the truth. If she sees us together in future, it also establishes we bonded over a shared incident. I guess. She stood up and stretched. I'm going to lie down for a while. I feel knackered. Do you want me to let the dogs out? No, I'll be up later to sort them. You just relax. It's okay. I don't mind. I know you don't, and I appreciate that, but this is my job and my responsibility. If you weren't here and I'd had a day like today, I'd still have to do it. I won't take advantage of you. Shame, Evan chuckled. You're stubborn on all counts, but I get it. See you later if I'm still up. Flora moved to cross in front of him, then hesitated, balancing herself with her hands on his shoulders. She bent and pressed a kiss on his cheekbone. Thank you for today. I've never had someone come running to the rescue. Evan caught Flora by the back of the neck and held her there a shade longer. His lips ghosted over her jaw as he breathed in the faint trace of woodlands. I'd do it all again if it ended in kisses. His fingers lightly massaged the nape of her neck, and Flora allowed herself a second to enjoy it. She pulled away, leaving him to the TV. As she climbed the stairs, a purposefully creepy voice floated up behind her. The Bobby misses you, Flora. Flora swore under her breath. Evan was going to be hard to resist. She just knew it. No, Flora. Ah, yes, Flora. We've never had anything like that happen, certainly not that I've heard. Flora studied Lady Jemima. Well, that's good news, I suppose. Maybe it means he won't come back. She'd realised that morning that Siobhan might not work on Sundays. She could have telephoned, but it wasn't something she wanted to explain over the phone. Also, she wanted to see Jemima's reaction in person. I'm sure you'll be fine. If you're worried about it, then don't walk them. You've got the use of the garden after all. Flora fumed. That might be okay in the short term, but she wasn't letting some dickhead scare her into not setting foot off the property. Plus, if the dogs didn't get proper exercise, they'd be bouncing off the walls of her tiny cottage. Aren't you worried about walking the show stock? She inquired innocently. That's not your concern. Flora nodded, feigning agreement. Jemima's dogs were primarily a commodity. She had come across similar people on the circuit. Not all, thank God, but some. Those who cared more about top breeder or top stud, just as she'd come across vets that didn't seem to like animals very much. That was why she tended to prefer dogs to human beings. They never pretended to be something that they weren't. Anyway, I thought I'd better let you know. I'm off now to do a home visit on a couple interested in Herbie. You remember him? The white miniature you kept muzzled? Flora might not have much power in the situation, but she could do a little passive aggression. Jemima gave her a hard look. Yes, well, let's hope it works out. The sooner he's settled elsewhere, the better. I think he's gorgeous, and I'm sure they will too. Was there anything else, Frida? I don't want to delay you. No, but are you sure you don't want to write down that description I gave you, just in case? Lady Jemima couldn't hide her irritation any longer. There's nothing wrong with my memory. Now, if you'll excuse me, you might have free time, but I have someone over for lunch. Jemima closed the door on her face, managing not to slam it, although Flora was sure that she wanted to. She marched back to her car, where Herbie sat panting in the driver's seat. I don't want to keep you, Frida. She mimicked Lady J's fake snobbery. More like, piss off and stay invisible, Frida. Does she seriously think I don't know she's doing that on purpose? She hopped in the car, budging Herbie over onto the passenger seat. I think the sooner you're out of here, the better, old boy. No point being beholden to a bitter, artificially enhanced cow. Jemima Gartside-Smith shut the door on the annoying little troll that Siobhan had seen fit to hire. The former Mrs. Gemma Smith, née Bullock, stalked down the hall into the large open living space, finding her guest sprawled out on the plush white leather. What would the perky little squirt think of this, she wondered. As soon as she'd heard Flora's description, she knew it was her ex-husband. The the same ex-husband currently lounging on her brand new upholstery. "What the hell do you think you're doing? I told you to avoid the dogs on this property." Jemima hissed at him, fine spittle spraying from pinched lips. "You know better than to tell me what to do, Jem. And I didn't have a clue she was anything to do with this place. She had a couple of big schnauzers with her." "You're too fucking noticeable, Gabriel. Brigley Prior isn't big enough for your operation and I'm out of it. I'm not interested in your business anymore." She loathed the vaguely whiny tone she heard creeping into her voice. "You'll always be my business, Jem. You're still Rid Bullock's only daughter, the same girl I dragged away from the family puppy farm and made my wife. Never forget, Jemima, I know what you are. You're the same hard-nosed bitch that knew how to drown a runt or flog a puppy with parvo for twice the price. You still have the talent for getting away with it too. That's in the past. I didn't have a choice. People always have a choice. You liked what you did and you loved the money. You got paid to do it. Isn't life boring now with your fluffy little Stepford dogs all neat and precise?" He eyed her body, taking in the expensive clothes. "Look at you, all gussied up and feigning respectability. But you can't hide all that useful bitterness or the heat that gave my cock fucking blisters." He stood up and walked behind her. Jemima stifled revulsion as his meaty hands grasped her waist, his sweaty palms probably soiling the silk of her blouse. Those hands wandered up her ribcage until they were firmly grasping her breasts. He squeezed one nipple in a brutal tweak that would have stung like a bitch had she not lost most sensation after surgery. Jemima was sickened by him, but had to acknowledge he still held her in some thrall. She'd married Gabriel in desperation as much as love, when she still had a tiny chance for redemption. Instead, he just encouraged the worst in her, turned her into a different kind of monster. With Gabriel's guidance, she graduated from backyard breeder to co-conspirator in a dog-fighting ring. The hand not torturing her breast now eased down her thigh and pulled her skirt up in front. With indecent haste, Gabriel slid into her knickers, instantly shoving 3 fingers inside her. Jemima was ashamed that he found her wet despite how physically distasteful he'd become. It was hard to recall that at one time Gabriel Smith had looked every inch like his angel namesake. A 5'10" gypsy look-alike, he'd been lean and swarthy, with long-lashed eyes the colour of graphite. When they met, he was 30 to her 17, and she'd run away with him, madly in love and not caring a whit about who or what he was. All she knew was what he made her feel. Being young and never witnessing any different, she'd rationalised when he was harsh and brutal, and eventually it didn't even affect her. Right up until the day 3 years ago when she found him trying to force himself on Siobhan's younger sister Veronica. It wasn't the first indiscretion by a long shot, but the stupidity of it angered her. Not only did it put an end to their marriage, but when Veronica confided in Siobhan was so angry, Jemima had to promise them anything and everything to keep quiet. Not that she would have cared if Veronica had pressed charges. No, Jemima couldn't handle losing face. Better she ended things on her terms. So Siobhan had become an employee, overpaid, but surprisingly useful, and Veronica had received a payoff. Jemima's mind returned to the present as Gabriel walked her forwards, his fingers still probing inside, not withdrawing until he had her pressed up against the back of the sofa. He forced her head over with an unrelenting hand and yanked her skirt right up over her hips. As she heard his zipper come down, Jemima was aware of the bare round flesh of his gut. The coarse hairs of his groin were rubbing against her. It felt repugnant and somehow necessary. "This fancy underwear isn't worth what you paid. It's not built to last, Jem." Gabriel smirked as he ripped the delicate satin and rubbed his thick cock against her. Jemima moaned as he took her hips in a firm grip and in one ugly motion thrust himself high and deep inside. He didn't give her chance to adjust, he just ploughed in, giving her his whole length. As she struggled to breathe, her nostrils and mouth shoved deep into the cushions, she pictured Gabriel's fat buttocks, wobbling with the force of his exertion. The extra weight he'd accrued meant that sweat dripped off him with each new angry jolt, and she loved every vile, painful second of it. Within another 5 solid thrusts he came, flooding her insides and not caring that she hadn't finished. Gabriel stood and wiped himself on her ruined underwear before zipping himself back together. Good job your staff isn't here on Sundays. Not that I'd mind giving them a show. Let them know exactly how their ladyship likes it. Maybe next time I'm here I'll show them just what a nasty slut you can be. Jemima straightened her skirt, cool facade back in place. The real winner here was her, and she knew it. It was he who couldn't live without her, not the other way around, and it rotted Gabriel's guts that she won the lottery not even 12 months after their divorce. Out of what she perceived as kindness, Jemima allowed him the illusion of some sexual control, but that's all it was, and he would never get her money. Now she could only keep him away from her dogs and her new persona. Still full of hot air, darling, and still unable to finish a job properly, especially when it involves my satisfaction. There's nothing here for you. No more bait dogs, not when you can't keep them secure. Stay away from the rescue bitch too. I don't need that imbecile getting suspicious. Jemima jabbed her finger in his face. If you bring the shit to my door again, I'll drop you in it. I mean it. Gabriel grabbed a tight hold of Jemima's wrist and twisted it behind her back, making her gasp in pain, but one laced with a twinge of excitement. Give me half the money and I'll go away for good. Otherwise cut the shit, because you know I'm going to do whatever I see fit. You'll never get a penny. He pulled her wrist tighter and went back to toying with her nipple. Jemima laughed, amused by his futile attempts at domination. Why would I want you to go away for good when this part of you is such fun? Maybe if you behave, I might reconsider helping in some way. But no more dogs. Not from here. Gabriel launched a backhanded slap across her face, and the sudden sting brought her closer to orgasm than she had been during the entire encounter. We'll see, Jem, we'll see. Pretty Flora might prove too much of a temptation, boyfriend or not. He gave her one final shove and left, angry and with a threat, just as he usually did. Jemima considered the pointlessness of ever marrying him, when she could have just kept him for fun. The fear and the pain and pleasure were so much more intense. It was only hours later that she recalled him mentioning Flora had a boyfriend. Back at the lodge, Evan's morning had been mundane but remarkably enjoyable. Getting up early, he'd puttered around and helped walk the dogs. It felt comfy and like teamwork, a perfect little to and fro. But as he watched her awkwardly reverse the car, he knew that as Flora went to, he would have to fro. More specifically, he was going to snoop, because though he knew it was wrong, Flora was still source material, and it would help to find out what fluttered her heart. There weren't too many places to look, and he started with her room, going straight to the framed pictures littering the dresser. They were all of dogs, or another version of her, a girl with a thinner face and less comfortable clothes, the twin sister, and somehow the same but completely different. Funny how looking at the shinier version, while wreathed in Flora's scent, left him practically indifferent. He'd just dropped to his knees to check under the bed when he heard the sound of someone clunking up the stairs. Evan leapt up and shot to the door, practically falling right over Trike as he pushed his nose through the gap in the door. Jesus Christ, he breathed out. You nearly gave me a fucking heart attack, boy. Evan had finally mastered the art of opening baby gates, but had forgotten to close the one on the stairs. Relieved, he went back to what he was doing, poking his head under the bed. A few seconds later, a pointy snout snuffled in his ear. He cast his gaze to the side and found Trike giving him the beady eye. "Yes, I know I'm a bastard, but let's keep this between us men. If you're tempted to spill, just remember I know where she keeps the puff jerky." From the doorway, anyone passing would have seen a man bum and a one-legged poodle bum peeking out from under the bed. Evan found a box and pulled it toward him. Leaning against the bedside cabinet, he pulled out a set of scrapbooks. Inside were mainly newspaper clippings. Most of them seemed like critiques for dogs she had either shown or owned. When Flora had talked about Benelli, Evan hadn't quite understood what she'd lost. There were pictures of her in a variety of colourful suits, rosettes pinned to her lapel, as she proudly presented their dogs. This version of Flora was either beaming in triumph or almost aggressively focused. Either way, she was utterly consumed by the moment. It was so odd to see her in makeup and a skirt. Her hair was longer too, no fringe, and it was wavy. Evan had to wonder if the new style was more than a coincidence. Looking at how happy she'd been, losing all of this must have been like a bereavement. And now he was thinking about it, she did seem a little sad. A man was responsible for curtailing the most successful period in her life, and yet she'd still found a way to take a chance on him. He looked at the sweet, chubby, smiling face and hoped that one day she would find a way to retrieve that look. Evan set the first book aside and opened a photo album filled with pictures of a younger and much wilder Flora. Two vibrant young girls in chaotic-looking backdrops, uncannily alike, and Evan looked for the differences she had mentioned. Young Freya had been equally round and her smile a shade less engaging without any dimples. The pictures of Flora often involved her cuddling scruffy-looking pups, boasting scabby knees and mud stains on her shorts. Freya, on the other hand, was always in dresses. In one particular shot, Flora was clinging on for dear life as Freya tried to wriggle from her grubby arms. Through it all, you could see the bond between the two, and it made Evan nostalgic for his parents and his brother Wilkie. God, he'd get some stick if Wilkes caught him mooning in a girl's bedroom staring at her picture books. He was about to put things back when some tattered newspaper clippings fell out from between the pages. They were from a local paper called the Ripon Herald. A close-up shot of a weather-beaten but once lovely woman bore the headline, "Local boarding kennels raided by the YSPCA." The woman's picture bore a remarkable resemblance to the twins, same face shape and mouth but different eyes and hair colour. In her heyday, she would have been quite a head-turner. A smaller inset picture captured the girls huddled together, distress palpable even through the camera lens. Evan skimmed the article, stopping when it revealed 19-year-old dog groomer Flora Marston instigated the report of her mother's offences. Evan blew out a breath. Whoa, Flora. Poor girl. Missing a direct quote from either of the teens, the source of the story came from an unnamed client of the business. He or she claimed the two had been supporting the boarding kennels for years while their mother bought in and bred an endless cycle of dogs despite their best efforts to dissuade her. The same informant praised the girls' bravery in finally revealing their circumstances and for seeking to get help. A later clipping announced that local business owner Penelope Marston had been given a community service order and directed to pay costs. To maintain her licence to run a boarding kennel, she was required to employ a manager who would act with autonomy, and Marston received a personal ban from keeping animals for 5 years. The YSPCA stated they would be monitoring the situation to see that the instructions in the court order were duly carried out. Evan leafed back through everything he'd skimmed, looking for any more pictures or news of Penelope, but there was nothing, no letters, cards, or other mementos. Presumably, Flora reported her mother and ended up losing both her home and half her family. God, she had some shitty luck. And what were the chances that with his track record, he wouldn't heap an extra dose on top?